Okay, Happy New Year, everybody. We're rolling out the AMP Act. So we're going to have a meeting on Thursday to do a final review, and the AMP Act will be ready to make public. So that means we need the TAPS group to grow in as many states as we can possibly get them in. Right now, we're in 19 states. We don't have administrators for all states yet, but we have got groups set up in each state, and we have some members in each state. And also means that the administrator of each state needs to recruit as many members as possible. And we need to start scheduling Zoom calls with your congressmen and your senators. And I hope everybody has accepted the invite to the legislative team. That's a group on Facebook. You can go to Facebook and just search for groups and search for legislative team. If you're not a member yet, you need to join, because all administrators, that's where we're sending notices and handouts and information and scheduling information to you there. All right, we've got 40 minutes on this call. We're already about 12 minutes into it, so I'm not going to take up any more time. We're happy to have Bill Bullard with us here to discuss the importance of growing the groups and how important it is to promote the legislation and why the AMP Act is so important. Bill, thank you.
Sure, and I'm sorry I joined here a little late. So what the TAPS group represents essentially is a non-denominational group of grassroots cattle producers and consumers who are very concerned about the crisis in the cattle industry today. And that crisis has been marked by years of depressed prices, by an alarming elimination of cattle producers from the industry, of ongoing concentration and consolidation that will lead this industry in the very same direction that the meat packers had led the poultry and hog industries. And in both of those industries, the commodity, poultry and pork, for example, are controlled from birth to plate. The independence of the livestock producer has been vanquished. And so the cattle industry is the last frontier. The meatpacking industry has their sights set on the cattle feeding sector of the industry right now. That's the first phase: capture control over the cattle feeding, eliminate all the unnecessary cattle feeders, which we can demonstrate is occurring because we've lost 75% of them in just the last 25 years since we entered the North American Free Trade Agreement. And so the process of this vertical control over the industry is well underway. And what we learned was that's harmful to both the producer and the consumer. The producer loses their liberties and freedom to make decisions and to market their animals when they're ready. And consumers lose their liberty and freedoms to choose, where they want their beef produced, who they want it produced by. Do they want to support the domestic production chain, supply chain? So all of those are taken away when the meat packers are allowed to continue the effort to vertically integrate the industry. So the AMP Act will be introduced, is being introduced to various members of Congress as a comprehensive reform measure to reverse the taking of the cattle industry out of the hands of independent cattle producers and out of the control of American consumers. And it addresses many, many issues. It addresses the unfair and anti-competitive conduct of the packers when procuring cattle. It addresses the need by consumers to have, and producers alike, to have more local and regional packing plants so that the beef they buy doesn't have to travel thousands of miles to get to their plate. And it addresses the need of the lack of beef in grocery store shelves that occurred in 2020, first time in history, that the consumer couldn't go to the grocery store and buy the protein they needed for their family. So we're in a serious crisis, even though, if you read the news reports, we see higher prices for cattle right now. Higher prices after 8 years of severely depressed prices. And if we look not too far in the distant past, we only have to go to 2014 and 15, 2 years in which we saw higher cattle prices being received by cattle producers, but it was short-lived. And right after 2015, cattle prices collapsed. And then we saw this anomaly in the market where beef prices that consumers were paying at the grocery store were reaching all-time record highs. They were marching quickly upwards, beef prices increasing month after month, year after year. And then at the same time that beef prices were increasing, we saw a prolonged period when cattle prices were stair-stepping downward. So what has happened is we've lost the connection between beef prices and cattle prices. That connection that has been historically sound has now been severed. And that's why we saw the two price points moving in opposite directions. Retail beef prices moving upward, cattle prices moving downward. And so we see from experience that our industry can experience temporary high prices, uplifting everyone's spirits, only to reverse and to crash further and faster than any time in history. And so we're likely at that period now and would expect that these higher prices will soon turn around unless these reforms are instituted to ensure that its competitive market force is dictating what the price of cattle will be and what the price of beef will be in the grocery stores. So the AMP Act is comprehensive. It's an omnibus package. It includes many of the efforts that have been introduced over the past couple decades on how to restore competition. And one of the easiest ones for both producers and consumers to recognize is the requirement that all beef sold in grocery stores be labeled as to where the animal was born, raised, and harvested, empowering consumers to exercise choice in the marketplace, and by doing so to create demand for the cattle raised by American cattle farmers and ranchers. So then we get to the importance of building support in each state. And where I said before, this is a non-denominational group. That means groups that I represent, for example, RCAF USA and other groups are working together with this grassroots group because we recognize this is the right way to go. Now, we have state affiliates in many states in Missouri, South Dakota, North Dakota, Wyoming, Nebraska, for example. We have numerous state affiliates. So as you gain members, you can contact, these cattle organizations in your respective state. And if they say, we're already a member of RCAF, you can say, well, RCAF is a part of this, as are many other organizations, recognizing that this is a movement. It's a movement at the grassroots level that is building in influence and its ability to reach into congressional offices that otherwise would ignore us. And the reason you're able to do that is because you've got members in their area. And so we support what you're doing, recognizing that it's non-denominational. We're not building membership from this. This is the grassroots group building the membership. But by working with TAPS Group, we are ultimately working more successfully in achieving our own dues paying members policies that they've developed, because we're in shoulder to shoulder on these policy needs. So that's my overview, Chuck.
Okay, thank you very much, Bill. That's great. I've been saying all along that the only way we're going to be successful at the TAPS Group is to get the consumer behind us. And it's hard enough to get producers behind us. We've been working for 2 years on this now, and we have people join, and they say, "Well, man, I'm with you. We got to get something done," and then they just kind of relax, and I don't know. It's just hard to get people to really take this seriously. Proactive is the only way to be. I mean, we can look back at this 2 years from now and say, well, we should have done something, or we can do it now. And we've got the AMP Act coming out. We've worked over a year writing this, and it is an omnibus bill. And hopefully we're going to find one of your senators and one of your congressmen or my congressman to introduce the bill in Congress, and then find other people to co-sponsor the bill. And then we got to get the public behind the bill. It needs to be a kitchen table conversation. The AMP Act, people need to know the basics of the AMP Act. They need to know that with the AMP Act in place, you can choose where your beef comes from. You can hold the packers and others accountable for violation of the antitrust laws. It will help bring the price down on beef, and it will also stop the hollowing out of rural America and the decimation of the cow-calf producer. So we all have to work together on that. Last time we met, I believe we discussed contacting the FFA and also generating postcards to mail to the elected officials. So we need to start thinking about those things, because as soon as we get the AMP Act rolled out, we want to push it tremendously hard. To do that, we're going to have to start contacting our representatives and congressmen and discussing all this. Anybody have any comments, questions for Bill, me, Angie, comments?
I do, if now's a good time.
Yeah.
So Chuck, I watched the video from last week, and some things came up, and it got me thinking, if we do grow this group as quickly as it sounds like we want to and need to, then as these ideas come out, I think we should have a structure on how to implement them. And I think you alluded to that, responding to Sherry's suggestion about the postcards. And I propose that we take a business plan outline, and we modify the components of that business plan and create a model that we follow, so that each goal of ours has a category, and we're able to clearly identify those goals. And I think that will allow us to put people on certain tasks or segments of that plan in order to roll out implementation of certain things as we develop them. So I propose that we take a business plan and use that as a shell, replace the language in the business plan template so that it asks us, instead of a question, for instance, like how are we going to generate revenue, it's going to be worded maybe how are we going to affect change in this way or that way, so that then we can use that as a guideline and fill it out.
That's an interesting idea. Do you propose to maybe put something together for us, or what?
Yes, I'll get something started, put it out to the group. I'll take a business plan template and I'll modify it, put it out to the group for discussion on what other modifications to make. And then we can make changes to that guide. And then I feel like we could tackle maybe one day a week, or one issue or section a week. We can put it in the group and get some input from members.
Sounds good. Anybody else?
The call, before I turn my microphone off, the call time and day works perfect for me. So I know that was brought up in the last meeting, questioning whether or not it was a good time and day. It's perfect for me.
Kathleen, any follow-ups with your congressman's office, Mr. Jackson? Kathleen went to sleep.
No, I'm trying to figure out unmute my stupid phone. No, I haven't heard anything back. I'm not, this is a new phone for me, so I'm trying to understand it. But, no, I haven't heard anything back. And I'm trying to get the TAPS group in Texas to grow. It's just, I don't know. I actually got more people to join in Oklahoma than in Texas. People just don't seem to want to join the group. I make all the posts and talk, and they'll read them, but they're just not joining.
Yeah, I really don't understand that, except I do know that I am aware, after asking a lot of questions and talking to a lot of people at meat counters and tire shops and feed stores, that there are a lot of people who don't really know what's going on. They're not even aware.
Yeah.
And then when you try to discuss it with them, their eyes glaze over and they just kind of go like, yeah, right. You know, that kind of thing. It's, so
I am going to, I talked with Angie the other day. Going to try to find somebody to help me, or have my son help me try to do a little outreach to Hispanics. Because I think especially in Texas, that's kind of an untouched territory. And they are into livestock. So maybe anything will help just to get the numbers up.
yeah. Anybody
Hey,
have?
Chuck,
Yes, sir.
just a quick comment. Roy Dominguez. Roy Dominguez is our former county sheriff, and he is also one of the main attorneys for our congressman, and he is now a member of TAPS. And not only is he a member of TAPS, but he gave me a call and said he will do pro bono any legal work that I need. So
For the TAPS
that was
group?
pretty exciting.
For the
Yep.
TAPS? Fantastic. Way to go, Jim.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's
Yeah.
great. Yeah. All right. That's good news. All right, we got 9 minutes left. Any other discussion? Angie?
I'm here. Just want to encourage everyone to keep on. It can get very frustrating. Chuck's been at this a lot longer than us, and you know, frustration does come in with trying to get people invited and stuff. But you just have to keep throwing the ball against the wall. Don't give up, because then you'll have a big fleet of stuff, or you'll get some, you know, great encouragement. So that would be, you know, my encouragement to you. If you need ideas, you know, talk amongst yourselves or us. Kathleen and I were talking the other night. I'm always available, message and email wise. Phone call, just text me first. I'm excited for everybody that's on the call today. I do appreciate each and every one of you stepping up and making the call. I don't know that I have anything else, although I'm super excited to get this AMP Act out. And you know, like Chuck said, we need people knowing about it. And to do that, we need people in our groups.
Yeah, I get excited every time I see people like this on the calls, and how our group's growing, because from where we started to where we are now is just amazing, because we have such good people in groups, people that are dedicated and they're resolute, and they have good ideas, and they all want the same thing. And that's you know, fair money for our cattle and a good choice for the American consumer. And I've got to say, we couldn't have gotten this far without Angie and Bill Bullard and Mike Schultz and Bon Meyer, and I could just keep naming people, Brett Kinsey, Shad Sullivan, all these folks that just come on here and just keep us pumped up, and people that have done this so long that they're just seamless when they get in and start their conversation. They're just great.
Yeah.
Appreciate
Chuck, if I could just add, the fact that you mentioned earlier that you talk to people who are just completely unaware and their eyes glaze over when you try to talk to details.
That's correct.
So the successes that TAPS has already had include expanding the knowledge base of members of Congress on these very issues, because those members of Congress, up until they've had a meeting with TAPS, were likewise had their eyes glazed over and didn't realize what's going on. And so our organization has been working for 20 years, but we keep going back to the same members of Congress. They're all in the upper northern plains area, primarily Iowa, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Montana, Wyoming, Colorado even. But now with TAPS, we've been talking to other members who we've never talked to before when their interest was focused on the topic. And what TAPS is doing is focusing their interest on the topic because they are their constituents calling for these meetings. So the TAPS group has already made tremendous headway in building greater awareness for the problem. And you can't solve a problem unless you first understand that a problem exists. So it's helping to get through that first phase.
Well,
Is
thank
the TAPS group, does it have a formal structure, nonprofit, or?
No, we're just a bunch of volunteers out here going crazy. That's
Just a loose-knit coalition of founded by grassroots producers.
So the reason why I ask is because in the last meeting I saw, Chuck, you brought up the livestock reporter, and if we put a story together, there may be a more effective way to distribute information. And for instance, I hesitate to say too much about this because I feel like if we put down a structure, then we'll be able to put a group of people on this specifically, as well as a couple other ideas that have been brought up. But basically, there's a press release app, for instance. Excuse me. So we could create a press release, and then we can get that press release distributed. And however, I think there needs to be either an individual or some sort of entity tied to that when it's created. So I'll look into that a little bit as well.
okay, good. Yeah, the main thing we need to focus on, guys, is like I said, growing your group and figuring out the best way to get in contact with your congressman, your senator. And our agenda in the past, like I said before, has been to initially make a conference call to their office, set up a Zoom meeting with their office through their ag person or through a scheduler, and then ask for a Zoom meeting with their boss, and then ask for a roundtable meeting in person with their boss in an area in their state of their choice, where hopefully we will have invited many of your TAPS members from your groups, and a lot of the people in our national TAPS will try to travel to that meeting or be on the Zoom call. So, and we'll have prepared questions to put them on the spot. You know, what do you know about labeling our beef? What do you know about violations of antitrust laws? What do you know about non-disclosure of things that the packers are doing that are disrupting our income? Just the right questions to ask them in person. So we need to work on that. That's our next goal. We'll get the AMP Act out and start scheduling meetings. Happy New Year, everybody. Let's make it a good one. Anybody
That's great. Thanks, Chuck.
Thank you very much, Bill, for being here.